All right, hello everyone. I want to welcome you to the MCC Art and Design Department's Visiting Artist Program. I'm Trevor Power. I'm the gallery curator here at MCC. I'm thrilled that Jeffly Gabriela Molina is here today to discuss the themes and ideas behind her work that's currently on exhibit upstairs in galleries 1 and 2. I first reached out to Jeffly in September of last year, actually. So it's been a full year of us, working together, having studio visits, having gallery visits, a lot of emails, a lot of collaboration. And I'm incredibly grateful that Jeffly has entrusted us to show this body of work here at the college. I'd like to give a special thanks to the Arts and Humanities Division for continuing to support this programming. I'd also like to thank Justin Schmitz and Paul Baer for helping set up the AV today. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the Friends of MCC Foundation for generously supporting the exhibition upstairs in galleries 1 and 2. I'll read a short bio of Jeffly and then we'll get started. Jeffly Gabriela Molina is a Chicago-based interdisciplinary artist from Venezuela. She moved to the US in 2007 and lived in Miami for 4 years, where she attended the New World School of the Arts. In 2011, Molina transferred to the School of the Arts of Chicago, where she graduated with a BFA in 2013 and an MFA in 2016. In addition to participating in multiple group and solo exhibitions, she's undertaken 2 permanent public sculpture commissions in Miami. She's been awarded an Emerging Artist Fellowship from the Driehaus Museum, the AAF Seebacher Prize for Fine Arts, a Carol Becker's Dean Grant, and a John W. Kurtich Scholarship. Please join us in welcoming Jeffly Gabriela Molina.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Before I begin, I'd like to know a little bit about this audience. Trevor mentioned that I am from Venezuela. Do we have any Venezuelan students in the room? I am actually from a city very close to the border with Colombia, so any Colombians? No? Any ESL students? Wonderful. So my first language is English. I will try to pronounce very well, but when I started college in the United States 15 years ago, I did not speak English. So it is an honor to be standing here today. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation, and I encourage you all to feel comfortable asking questions. If we run out of time to answer the questions, I will also be available to discuss afterwards during the reception. We are here today to learn about my practice. After a brief introduction to how and when I became an artist, we are going to look at previous bodies of work, and we are going to discuss in detail some of the artworks that are now in the exhibition in the galleries. We will examine the theme of identity, specifically as it deals with migration, family, work, loss, and love. These subjects are interwoven in the work that makes up the exhibition. How one becomes what one is. Cómo uno se convierte en lo que uno es. We will find answers to that question again and again, not only in the paintings, but also in the stories that I am to share with you today. At the end of this artist talk, some of you might feel inspired to ponder this question in relation to your work and also in relation to your personal stories. My practice as an artist. Where or when did it start? Like most children, I love to draw and paint, but I was serious about it. And at the age of 7, I was given my first easel and a set of oil paints. Since then, not a year has passed without me making at least 1 or 2 paintings. What did I paint? Well, in the beginning, I painted cows, Flintstone characters, and at least a handful of sad harlequins. At age 10, following my parents' divorce, I moved with my grandmother to what I like to call the wayward house. For a period of 1 year, I did not want to live with either of my parents. And so it happens that my grandmother did not want to live with her husband either. We were further joined by my fierce and independent Aunt Fifi, who had gone bankrupt, and my little cousin Crystal, whose parents could not take care of her. The four of us left our unhappy homes in San Cristobal and moved together to a small, colorful apartment in a rural town named Santa Barbara. There I painted exactly one more sad harlequin. It was also in Santa Barbara where I began to draw portraits of Aunt Fifi. She would pose for me for hours at a time, numerous times. I liked the feeling I got from drawing something real. I am not only referring to her physicality, to her face or body, I was also interested in the reality of her feelings. She seemed sad at the time, and I was in earnest to translate that sadness into my drawings. She loved the drawings, and to me, it meant that they were helping her to make sense of her sadness, that they were making her feel better. Since then, I have been inclined to draw or paint things that are real and meaningful to me, to my family, friends, and to the communities to which I belong. I observe, think, wonder, and as a way of making sense of things, I paint. Okay. Trevor mentioned, yes?
Yeah.
I got it. Trevor mentioned in my introduction that I came to the US in 2007. I spent a few years in Miami learning English until I was able to apply to the art school department that is attached to the Miami-Dade Community College. And like many of you, I began to pursue art at a professional level. In 2011, with the support of a wealthy Chicago family, I transferred to SAIC. This is the work that I was making after I first graduated from college. At SAIC, I was overwhelmed. The Art Institute of Chicago was still one of the first museums I had ever visited. The program was multidisciplinary, which meant I could take almost any courses. And in fact, I only took 2 painting courses. Moreover, though I had a wonderful community of teachers and peers, a couple of mentors in and outside of the institution encouraged me to make work that was less personal, less intimate, more about ideas. In one critique, after I had shown an artwork and discussed what inspired it, I was told something along the lines of, "But I don't really care about your personal life." That was an important statement, as mean as it might have sounded. I am not sure that back then I was making work that stood out on its own. Although I am being candid with you today, it is important that you aim for the work to stand on its own. Your work should not need an explanation. And with that same token, you should not be made uncomfortable by generously giving one. That comment did affect me, though. And for a while, I not only shied away from using my voice to talk about the intentions of my own work, I shied away from making narrative, figurative work. Following my graduation in 2013, I made work that responded to some isms in modern history that I found both challenging and compelling: minimalism, conceptualism, folk art. This is an example of the work that I was making during that time. The year after I graduated, I decided to go back to school to pursue my master's degree. This time, my sense of self was a bit more robust, and I immediately went back to figuration because that's what I have always loved to paint. This is the work that I made following my second college graduation. In 2018, I had my first solo exhibition at a major Chicago gallery, and these figurative, silhouetted works sold very well. So well that some people expected, if not encouraged me, to continue creating the same type of work. But I was, and still am, in the process of learning and discovering a visual vocabulary for my own work. So after that very successful exhibition, I pivoted. Some might say that I pivoted a lot. I decided that I needed to teach myself how to paint people. And I also wanted to be less anxious about my straight edges and flat surfaces. I was suspicious about how trendy it had become for minority artists to use silhouettes, patterns, and bold colors as if that was enough to reflect on our layered experience. Something else prompted me to want to explore a more representational style. Something in my life happened during this time that demanded that I painted more realistically in order to capture, dignify, and convey a particular experience. The body of work that is now exhibited in Galleries 1 and 2 began to be developed after the arrival of my mother and stepfather in the United States. In 2018, it had been 11 years since I had left my family home in Venezuela. During this time, I had also reconnected with a Chicago artist whose work I greatly admire for its painterly freedom, use of color, and texture. I married that artist. His name is Bradley Stump, and he is here today. This is a portrait of my mother when she was a child. The work exhibited here at McHenry Galleries is not unlike the drawings I was making of Aunt Fifi at the Wayward House when I was 10. The difference is that I now have gotten somewhat confident in observing reality from different angles and using other tools to explore that reality. One of those tools is painting from photographs. My mother, of course, did not look like this in 2019 when this painting was done, but something did. See, my mother moved from politically charged Venezuela to Chicago, not so much because she wanted to, but because she saw a need to do that. She came here with her husband, her little dog Lupe, and their life savings to start anew. They moved in with me into a little apartment. Like Aunt Fifi, my mother will sometimes be sad. She liked to reminisce about Venezuela, about a time when our country and our city, San Cristobal, was different, more prosperous, more safe. She liked to remember the freedoms and privileges she enjoyed as a child and later as an adult. In our little apartment in Chicago, she often missed her parents, my grandparents, who still live in Venezuela. Some of what inspired me to make this painting is that during this period of time, I was not only concerned for my mother, I was concerned about her future. It was as if our roles had been reversed. I wanted to protect her. With this painting, I found a way to reassure her that things will be okay, that she will be safe and happy, and that our puzzles, our dreams, her dreams, will not be made of sand. In 2021, my favorite great uncle passed away in Venezuela. Something I had noticed in the museums I have visited is that when it comes to historical portraits in representational art, the portraits are often, not always, of wealthy men and women, some of whom might have been extraordinary in their contributions, some not so, but with a last name that afforded them the privilege of having an artist of their time paint their picture. I had the impulse of painting my uncle because he had been someone beautiful. My mom had brought with her a tiny old photo of him when he was young, the kind that you save in your wallets. My intention with this portrait was simple. I wanted to honor him. I wanted to honor the memories we shared of him because although he himself never attended high school, he was the one to teach my mother how to read and write and value education. Although he was far from wealthy, he was the one who always host barbecues and family reunions in the backyard of his home, a home that had polished cement floors and curtains in place of doors. In 2006, he wrote a letter to his children and grandchildren, so sophisticated that it led me to think he could have been a writer or a poet, had he not been asked to abandon middle school in order to work and help my great-grandmother and his siblings. You can see fragments of that letter on the side of the canvas if you go to the galleries and you really look closely. Before I painted his portrait, I magnified the letter and transferred it with graphite onto the linen before I painted the portrait. With the little flower bouquet that accompanies this painting, I wanted to say, thank you, you were loved. We have been talking about identity, and specifically, we have been talking about migration, family, and love, and loss. When I made this portrait, I was starting to recognize that a lot had been going on in my life. I had spent more than a decade living mostly alone in a different country. I now live with my mother, my stepdad, the little dog, and my husband had moved in before we married when COVID hit as a global pandemic. When I realized how fragmented I felt, I also understood that I couldn't reconcile my parents' version of me, which had not been updated for many years, with the person I had become. I made this painting to reflect on that, on the fact that for a while I couldn't look at myself and my own reflection and understand who I was. Instead, I busy myself trying to make ends meet. I had to work, make things, to sell things, apply to grants, loans. Not unlike the previous piece, this painting was inspired by the need to wrestle and reconcile different versions of myself while being under a lot of pressure. I discovered the work of Edward Muybridge, image on the right, top right, as an SAIC student. When I first encountered Two Men Boxing, that is the title of the image above, I wanted that image to have come from me. Not because it was brilliant in any particular way, which it was, but because the two men looked so alike as though they were one and the same person. In 2021, Muybridge's image so mirrored my experience that I decided to set up a photograph of myself boxing, and I painted it. I want to point out that in making this work, I further rid myself of some constraints that had prevented me from making the work I wanted to make. Yes, I referenced another artist's work. In fact, I appropriated fundamental qualities of the work of another artist. I photographed myself in the nude in order to translate how vulnerable I felt. I combined styles. I used pattern straight edge, but also I use stylized figuration. Ánimas benditas rueguen por nosotros. Blessed souls in purgatory, pray for us. I have been talking about how my work is a reflection of my identity, however fragmented, plural, or multicultural that might be. But my experience and that of my family is not hermetic or self-contained. I made this painting at the beginning of 2022 when the pandemic still posed a major threat, when the war in Ukraine started. In Venezuela, things had been going from bad to worse, and in the United States, political conflicts had continued to become dangerous and profound. This painting was my response to those bigger issues. It renders a gesture of faith, practiced mostly by women in the homes I grew up in. In times of distress, a glass of water will appear conspicuously atop a prominent shelf or on the center of the dining table. The glass will always be on a plate to prevent other house guests from drinking the salt water. I made it as large as I could and added a red frame as a symbol of urgency. This painting is a form of prayer. It is also a reflection of the fear that my family and I felt or feel when we face current global issues that grow unpredictable and scary. That is a photo of me when I was a baby, visiting my great-grandmother's house. You can see there is a glass of water for the souls right behind me. The last painting I like to discuss in detail is part of a series titled Homemade Sculptures. This series actually began with a cup of water, which to me is another homemade sculpture. The bouquet, like the glass of water, presents us with a three-dimensional sub-object that I composed with meaning and intention. When it comes to the flowers, they are an acknowledgement. The flowers I meticulously arrange and paint acknowledge my experience of finding a home. These paintings specifically address what it feels to create a home after many years of searching for one. Next to the flowers, you can see the work of Paula Modersohn Becker, whose work also served to inspire this series. I would now like to go through the rest of the slides without talking much about the paintings. With the information I have shared, I now invite you to observe, think, wonder, and build your own interpretations about these other works that I have not yet discussed. It is my hope that as you look closely at this work, you can create your own connections and develop your own reflections. One of the most important things to me as an artist is that my work is relatable, that it reflects other people's feelings and experiences as well as my own. I made the previous this painting after visiting the Guggenheim Museum in New York last February. They were featuring a major retrospective of the work of Alex Katz. I want to say that we will have the opportunity to go back to any of these slides if your question relates to any, in particular to any of these artworks. And finally, the painting that bears the title of this exhibition, How One Becomes What One Is, a portrait of me in the nude, holding the remote shutter, which assisted me in taking my own photo. And that is my studio. Thank you so much for listening. I now welcome any questions. Okay, I know that we can be shy, but I will not believe that you guys do not have questions for me. Okay? Yep.
When you were talking about women boxing, you were saying how you broke free of a lot of things that you were sort of hesitating to do. Was like referencing other artists. Can you talk about why you had those hesitations before you were able to bring?
Right. So one of the things that you guys might experience in school, like I did, is you will hear different perspectives on the kind of work that you should do or how you should approach certain things. Some people might tell you, oh, loosen up. Some people might tell you, oh, keep developing that talent that you have to represent something so tightly and beautiful. Some people might tell you, do not represent, do not take from other people's work. Some people might tell you the opposite. I think you should follow your instincts. For me, it was important to break out of certain boxes that people had tried to fit me into, whether I should paint with patterns and colors because I'm a Latina and a woman, and that work really sells. I needed to break out of that and really continue listening to the instinct that told me what the work needed. In school, you might learn a little bit about appropriation. It is important that we honor and take from other artists. If you think that you're doing something so unique, I am sorry to break it to you. You're probably not. 99.9% you're not. You're just representing your own experience and developing a vocabulary, yes. But someone else has done something like that before. Someone else is doing something like that in another part of the world. And what should be important to you is that you're true to yourself, to what you need to express, how you need to express it. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
So the photography class wants to know, your use of your family's photographic archive is really important in the work. Can you talk a little bit about the selection process? Is it the actual image or who originally made the image? We'd love to hear more about the way you source your images from your family archive.
Right. So first was the idea. I understood when seeing my mom so nostalgic and melancholy that her mind was often going to the past. I wanted to share that experience with her. So that was the first thing that guided my wanting to collect these images of the past, to be able to understand what she was referencing, what she was feeling, to be able to look at this time through her eyes. So that was the first thing that led me to ask for family albums. Once those albums came into my possession, I had to now immerse myself because I am the artist. I cannot necessarily let my mom, or perhaps there's another art project now that I'm talking about it, choose the image. But in this case, it was I opened the albums and I looked through the images and I allow myself to insert my own emotions. I was feeling very compassionate at the time towards my mother. My mother seemed very vulnerable to me. She seemed to need my protection somehow. And when I saw these images of her when she was a kid, I thought one of the questions that I remember thinking was something along the lines of, I bet you never imagined that you will ever have to leave your country, or that you will ever have to leave a place that is so familiar and comfortable and welcoming to you. So I chose the images based on my feelings towards my mother, based on the images themselves. I think that in this case, she's blowing a candle, so she's probably making, or she's about to blow a candle. It's her birthday. She's about to make a wish. So it really fitted with the idea of her making a wish for her future. So first, the idea guides my materials, the materials I will use. In this case, it was a photograph of my family. And then I allow my own instinct, my own emotions while looking at those images. I allow those emotions to dictate which images I am going to work with. And then I decide whether I'm going to crop that image and how I am going to crop that image in order to make it into a painting. I decided to add the blue sky, for instance, because I wanted to talk. The balloon in this case is a symbol for hope or for her dreams. And I wanted this to go into the universe so that it will manifest. I also wanted the sky to be blue because we tend to relate a beautiful day with happiness, with a good day, with it's something like a good omen. So, and I made it colorful because I want her life to be colorful, no black and white, no gray, no sepia. So all of these decisions are very much dictated by the idea, by the intention. I want the artwork to carry further. Okay? Yeah? I'm sorry, can you repeat it in a little louder? Can you tell me? I can hear you.
I have a microphone too, if people
Yeah,
want to.
I'm so sorry, I can't hear still. Yeah. We're gonna give you a microphone. Thank you so much. Thank you for repeating. I know I really appreciate it. Oh, struggle, yes. What I struggle with the most. Let me think about this question. You know, in making this presentation, I wanted to package everything tightly for you all and to say, this is why I titled it How One Becomes What One Is, because everything has to do with the same thing. But art is not really that way. Art sometimes responds to, you know, today you are responding to your parents' arrival, and tomorrow you break up with your boyfriend, and the day after you're laid off from work. And it so happens that you make these different paintings about these different situations, and you don't know, once you become a professional artist and you are understanding that your work might be exhibited in a gallery, you start wondering, oh, but what am I doing? My work is all over the place. I don't have a core theme, a central subject. Sometimes I struggle with that. But at the same time, one thing that I've been learning is that you should just make the work. By the time you're given the opportunity to have a show in a gallery, you will figure out a title that serves as an umbrella for all the work that you've been making. That is one of the things that I might struggle the most. Another thing that I struggle the most will be perhaps the fact that we artists just struggle to be able to spend that much time in the studio, and seldom do we get rewarded for that financially. But outside of that, I really I mean, it's not that I am all happy in the studio. For sure not. That sounds silly. I suffer so much. but that the suffering is part of the process, you know, coming up with an idea, feeling dumb. For sure, I feel that I run out of ideas every once a month. But I've gone through that so many times that I know that an idea will come. If I sit down in my desk and I sketch and I allow myself to think for about an hour, something will come up. Sometimes you are so busy worrying about the doubts that you have about your own work and about the doubts you have about your own abilities to make that work, that you eat up all the time that you should be investing in making the work. So, yes.
You mentioned that suffering is a major book for you to make work. Do you think suffering is a necessary element to make good art in general?
Absolutely not. And I'm sorry if I said that. I do think that emotions, intense emotions, are great fuel for great art. Because our emotions are responses to experiences that are truthful, that are real to us. And if you use those emotions as fuel to create certain ideas, to come up with an artwork, then that artwork will have some of that intensity and that will make that artwork transcend. It will make it vibrate. It will make it more relatable. But no, I hope that not all of my paintings seem sad to you. You see, for instance, the flowers are about me finally finding a home in the United States. This painting, as nostalgic as it seems, is still very much about hope, about wishing for a better future. So no, I think that I really want to emphasize this because this is very important. When I was in college, there were a lot of romantic ideas about the artist, the starving artist, the Casanova artist, the artist that cannot keep a relationship. Yes, and then I don't remember what was the third one, but let's stick to the suffering artist. Those are constructs. And me as a woman, the woman artist that cannot be a mom. Now, I am not a mother, but I do not believe that I cannot be a mom if I want to be an artist. I think that all of these are simple boxes that put you in a situation where you feel that you have to act in a certain way to be something. Do not fall for those traps. Make sure that your life is full, is as beautiful as you want it to be, and use all of the range of emotions from suffering to pure happiness as fuel for the work that you make. Trevor, I think there was another question over here.
I was interested in that your work is very precise and concise. You plan things out, you very exactly, and even your early work was very strategically planned. Have you ever done abstract emotional thinking to deal with the feelings that you have, just as an exercise? And how do you feel that an artist, that a painter, somehow knows what they're going to do, or must they experiment with some things before they arrive with moving on?
So I was asked two questions. The first one is, have I ever tried to use abstraction to work through some of these emotions instead of making work that is so meticulous? I think that it is important that it is important for you to go to the studio as much as you should be going to the studio. And what gets me into going to the studio is making work that I am familiar and comfortable with making. In art school, I was often encouraged to go outside of my comfort zone, out of my box, to not do things so meticulous and so tidy. But it just so happens that I am seriously OCD. I paint the way I clean my house, the way I cook my meals, the way I dress. It is a reflection of who I am. It is the vocabulary I started to develop when I was a young kid and I was making drawings of Aunt Fifi. I was trying to capture her in my own way. And yes, it is important for you all to explore different things. When I did this body of work, I believe I was making pretty abstract paintings and that I was really out there, that I was really working completely outside of the box. Whatever that means to you, that's what I will encourage you all to do. For me, this was my version of abstraction. This was my version of working through feelings in a way that didn't involve figuration, but it still involved very meticulous planning and order and organization of an image. The second question was, what was the second question? Does somebody remember? I am so sorry. If it comes back, I will answer it.
When it comes to your pieces that are based on the time work, what sort of inspired your color palettes?
Sorry, I didn't understand. Can you repeat again? There is a little echo, so.
So for your pieces that are like based on your old photographs and stuff, like windows, what inspires your color choices for your pieces?
So one of the things that inspire the color choices is again the idea. For instance, let's go back to the continue deconstructing this image. Why the red balloon? Because like the cup of water, like the frame of the cup of water, I wanted to convey that it was urgent. You see, exit signs are red. Ambulances have red lights to them. Red is a color that conveys importance, urgency. For me, it felt urgent that my mother's wishes will materialize. It felt important that whatever she hoped for herself will become true. It felt important that the sky was blue to convey a good day. And then when it comes to the color choices and other choices like that, I don't try to follow, because the photograph is black and white, I have to make up the colors. So I could have maybe made them yellow, but then yet again, these are kids. So I thought the color white will convey something pure. And then I added some color here and there based on the image that I was referencing. So yes, again, the idea is very important. That's a really great question, actually, because color is very, very important and should also be very intentional in a painting. It does have an effect on the viewer who is trying to understand what is the DNA, what is the emotion, what is the thing that that painting is trying to convey. Andrea, do you remember the question? Do we have a question here?
Maybe I should ask the question where. But I'm curious, that we see the work in the final form, and we see the origin. And I was curious about the process of method. The things that we do not see. You mentioned you would sit at the desk, and maybe walk around. I don't know what to do maybe graphic, something secretly like to do that. I'm curious about that invisible part of your process that is critical to you.
Yes.
Like I think you don't see that part that maybe really critical.
That is a very good question. So I am being asked about the part of the process that you do not see. You're seeing the original image in a lot of the cases, and you're seeing the end product. What in here am I not expressing? The truth is that a lot of my paintings start as titles, as writing. So I am a person that likes to write. In fact, I have to say I am not very good at drawing. You will not find very good sketches in my sketchbook. What you will find is lists, a lot of lists of words or feelings or situations. I also do not have a journalistic practice. You will not find that I have actually written about all of these situations ahead of time. No. I also don't write every day when it comes to my sketchbook. I write sometimes once every 3 months when I'm sitting down to develop what I like to call my inventory of ideas. That's what I call my lists. And in my lists, I might write that I want to paint something that is nostalgic, that I want to paint. Sometimes I write the word hands, and I don't know why, but I keep going back to it. I want to make a painting about hands, or I want to make a painting about a carrot, or I want to make a painting about a good person. So writing is part of the process. When I sit down at my desk, I'm trying to, I often revise these lists that are inspired by personal events, by experiences, and then the lists, the words conjure an image, inspire an image. And then I might do a quick sketch. Oh, well, I want to do something like this. Or then I might have to find other tools like family albums. Or I have to ask for family albums. I have to revise family albums. And then I start selecting the picture. Another thing that you don't see in this process, part of my process is preparing the surfaces. I sometimes have a great idea, but I cannot develop it until a week or two later. And so what happens is that I have to stretch the linen onto the wall. I actually staple my linen onto the wall. Then I prepare the surface. Then eventually I get to make a drawing. Then eventually I get to paint. There is an important habit that I have recommended it to a lot of peers, which is when I write a title, when I make a sketch, even if it's a drawing made of stick figures, I'm not lying. I draw very poorly. I do not draw like I paint. That is a promise. This is important because a lot of the times we have an idea and we wait on it. And 10 days later, that idea seems silly. Oh, that was not a good idea. Oh, I just don't have it. That I'm glad I didn't make it. What a dumb painting that would have been wrong. The only bad ideas are the ideas that do not get materialized. So if life happens, if life gets too busy, I recommend you to write it down. Write down your idea, make a little sketch for it. That is a promise. You will be able to come back to that idea and honor it and transform it into a painting or into a sculpture or into a photograph, a film, because you wrote it down, you wrote its importance, maybe you even wrote some detail like what size it might be, and that will allow you to come back to it weeks later, even months later. So that is another part of the process that you might not see.
You plan on exploring identity in the future, or have you resolved that question?
Have I resolved the question of identity? I don't think that gets resolved, right? Especially because we continue to morph. Right now, I am in my mid-30s, and I am this person that you see. Right now, I can tell you that I have spent half of my life in the United States and another half in Venezuela. That there is this duality in me that I still wrestle with. But that won't be me 25 years from now or 10 years from now. 10 years from now, I'll be somebody else. And that's why identity, the word identity, keeps coming up again and again in art. And I know it can be like a broken radio. Sometimes, oh, the work was about identity. I've been there. But it is a thing that we should explore. Now, when the word gets thrown out there without any specifics, you should question it. I try to be very specific. The word deals with identity in relationship to what? To migration, family, work, loss, and love. Migration, family, work, loss, and love. Those are the themes that are interwoven into the work that I am presenting in the galleries. I wanted you to know that identity wasn't just a term that I throw at you and that now we can just dance with it without actually giving it meaning and substance. So, have I worked through the theme? Probably not. Will I continue making work that deals with identity? Probably yes. But what about that identity? Maybe I won't be making work that deals with migration. Maybe I'll be making work that deals with motherhood if I become a mom, or with my marriage, if later on I want to do that too. So yeah. Depends on the size. So the little paintings, the flower series or the candy jar upstairs, that can take as little as 2 days without counting the time I sat in my desk to break out of my artist block, without counting the time I spent preparing the surface. So little paintings can take, if I am really accounting for all of this time, a week to 10 days. Very large paintings have sometimes taken me a month or even a couple of months. I try to work on different pieces at a time, or at least to have some things started. I wish I had another photo of my studio, but usually in the studio, the other 2 walls, you will see a couple of things that are started. That way, if a painting is becoming too challenging, I can jump into the other one. Or sometimes if a painting is just not happening well, you can just jump into the other work and avoid that type of anxiety to interrupt your flow.
Okay, I think we're here that long unless you really want a question. Yeah, if you go over there, I think I'm over there, I'm going to So when the Galeria originally moved to Chicago, so actually
Why? Because why my family moved to Chicago instead of something like Miami or yes. Because I was here. I was here and I was able to provide a home for them for a little while. They moved back, not to Venezuela, but they did move to Texas because the winters were too harsh.